right. So forgiveness is such a great topic. I can't wait to dive into this one. I cannot possibly say everything that needs to be said on the topic of forgiveness, but I'll summarize as much as I can, and I hope you get a lot out of this. So, starting with just a little quote: forgiveness is not to give the other person peace, forgiveness is for you. Take that opportunity. I think this is such a great quote because so many times we feel like it is giving the other person peace when it is truly about all of us. So, or about ourselves, I should say. So we'll dive in first to talk about the myths of forgiveness, which there are a lot of them out there, right? So the first one is that forgiveness is acceptance. A lot of people think that you have to just accept that it happened and allow the behavior maybe to continue in order to forgive it, that there's no way that you can do anything to counteract what has happened, right? But you can forgive the action and still not tolerate it again in the future. Forgiveness is condoning. It is not approval. If you forgive somebody, you don't necessarily say that you condone and accept and approve of what they're doing, right? You're just letting it be an event that happened in the past. You're not bringing a past wrongdoing into the current present moment. And a lot of people think that forgiveness requires a conversation between two people, but that's not true either. You don't have to ask for forgiveness, and you don't actually need somebody else to give it to you. And you also don't have to tell anybody else that you forgive them. So if there is something that you're harboring a lot of resentment for and you want to forgive somebody, you don't ever have to get in touch with them and have this conversation with them. And that's really important for anybody that you might have even lost touch with, or perhaps they've passed on and you won't have another opportunity. That can be really tough sometimes, but you can apply forgiveness at any time that you want to. It happens within you alone. Some people think that forgiveness shows weakness, that it's not, that it's too nice or too weak to say that you're forgiving somebody for something, and that it's stronger to hold on to any kind of resentment or bad feelings that you might have. But that's the opposite is true of that, right? It takes actually a very strong sense of confidence and maturity to be able to forgive somebody completely for something that they've done. People also think that forgiving is forgetting, and that's not true. Again, the opposite should be true with this one. It's actually wiser not to forget. You can forgive, but still remember what happened, because you should always remember the lesson and what you've learned, because that's where your true learning opportunity comes from. Forgiveness is quick. That is another myth, or can be, right? It can be quick if basically the moment that you decide that you're going to do it, it can happen, but it can take a little while to process through your feelings and get through it and remind yourself and repeat how, you want to apply this forgiveness. And you might even consider yourself that you have forgiven somebody, but then there might be a moment that crops up that kind of reactivates you again. So you might need to kind of reapply the process and remember that you are ultimately trying to forgive them for this thing that they've done. So some things to remember when it comes to applying forgiveness. It's not your responsibility to fix or punish the person who has done whatever they're doing to hurt you. It's really none of your business, actually, what happens to them. And, some people bring up karma in this kind of situation, but truly it's not your responsibility. Whatever it is that needs to happen to them will happen to them. And they're just on their own path, learning their own lessons. We've talked about this already, right? So you can release the need to be in charge of the situation, and you can move on with your life in peace without having to worry about what happens to them. Remember that any stress, resentment, anger, any negative feelings that you're feeling is only created inside you. They are not causing these feelings. They're not causing the thoughts that you have. So just remember that you can take responsibility for these feelings, right? So even if they did something to hurt you, it's up to you to take action and protect yourself from it happening again. And that's all about you. So They may have crossed the boundary. They might have done the thing that you don't approve of, but the only thing that really matters is your reaction to it. And it's truly, truly the only thing that you can control, right? And you don't have to harbor the negative feelings in order to do this. You can do this in a very peaceful and calm way. You don't have to have anger in order to, apply boundaries. This can be done really, really calmly. And this applies to you too, right? So there are things that you might be having a hard time forgiving yourself for, things that have happened in the past, or maybe you feel like you're running behind in life, and there's things that you regret or wish you wouldn't have done. And so you can really apply this process to forgive yourself as well. And you can release these negative feelings you have about yourself, right? You can just drop these past things that have happened, be in the present moment, recognize that right now is all you have, and just start treating yourself better moving forward. And remember that you always have the free will to let go, and nobody else can control that. So it sounds like easy for me to say, right? But truly, if you think about it, it's as easy, or it can be as simple, I should say, not easy, but as simple as if you have your, a fist tightened up and it's really, really tense and really, really tense, and you imagine that as this tension that you're holding, at any point you can decide to release it, right? And to just open your hand and relax. And you can do that with this. You don't have to keep holding on to this. There's no magic time or magic event or moment that's going to suddenly, come about that allows you to finally do this. It's your free will, and you are in control of this, right? So we're going to go even a step deeper into radical forgiveness. And this might be a little bit further higher concepts than you're ready for right now, but that's okay. Come back to it later. But just sort of be here and absorb it at least, right? Just pay attention to what is happening here and see if you can allow some of the truth of this to sink in. So in radical forgiveness, some of the concepts are, again, ultimately, we're all here to experience life and learn lessons. So if you have anybody who has done an act of wrongdoing against you, it can always be a new opportunity that's been presented to allow for your own personal healing. So anything that's given to you is, and sometimes you'll see it repeated. You'll see the same situation or the same scenario, maybe even in different relationships, that you always feel the same thing coming up. That's a great sign that you have something inside of you that needs healing and that you need to work on. And these opportunities are just going to keep arising until you do. So another thing that you can do here in radical forgiveness is just really question the truth of your self-created stories. You have created all of these stories inside yourself, especially when there's some kind of a resentment you're holding. And you really need to question your thoughts on this, right? Are things really as you see they are? Can you really see 100% of what's been going on in this other person's life, or their whole entire side of the story? Have you been open to hearing what's going on their end without only making assumptions on your side, right? So you have to look through more than just your own lens. You have to take a more broad view of the situation to really question this truth and see what's actually happening. And then also just drop the ego attachment of how things should be. As humans, we have a great big tendency to want to think that things should be a certain way, or that things should be fair, and that they're not if they don't go the way that we want them to. But really, that's not what life is. Things should not be any certain way. They just are what they are. So you have to drop that attachment to what you hoped they would be and just recognize the flow of life as it is. And release the need to be right. This can be a toughie, right? So you can really, really, really save yourself a lot of stress if you really believe that almost any argument you have with anybody doesn't really matter in the long run, right? And the need to be right is, again, just your ego holding on to an identity of a thought that you have. And it's shutting down any openness to what could be actually happening, and allowing that you might be wrong sometimes, right? I mean, there are plenty of times, and sometimes even in the very same conversation, we're all right and we're all wrong. We're all right because we have our own point of views, and that is correct and accurate. but also there is no way that you can see what's going on for everybody. So you're also always wrong. Like that's just kind of how it is. So releasing the need to be right will open you up to asking questions and wanting to learn more and just being more open. And with that, it's a lot easier to release any, frustrations that you have that way. And again, release the need to condemn or to punish the offender because it is not your job. That is a huge responsibility and you don't need to take that on, right? So let it go, let their life be their life, let them learn their lessons. You take this as your lesson learned and just move on. So again, no worksheet for this section, but definitely come into the community. What came up? What you're thinking about forgiveness? And are there times that you've maybe struggled or have had a hard time forgiving somebody, or you still are and you want help walking through that? Come on in and share it with us and we'd be happy to support you there. Okay, so in the next video, we're going to talk more about being present and taking responsibility. See you there.